it's Michaela and you're watching FunsizedStyle. I'm super excited to share with you guys today's video because today's video is all about eyeshadow palette. I don't know if you guys have seen this tag going around on YouTube in the beauty community, but it is called the All About My Eyeshadow Palettes tag, or the eyeshadow palettes tag. And I'm really excited to film this. I miss like the classic YouTube days of like a good old tag video. Those used to go around all the time, and now they're like non-existent. Fellow YouTubers have brought them back, and I thought this one was super fun, one that I would participate in and share with you guys. This tag was created by Samantha March and Allie Kleins, but the first YouTuber that I saw doing this tag video was Ashley Clady here on YouTube, so I will link everybody's channel that I mentioned in the description box below. I highly recommend you check out those gals' channels. They are great, but Ashley was the first YouTuber that I saw do this tag video, and I thought it was super fun. Allie and Samantha created it was a collaboration originally between them two, and then it just kind of sprouted on YouTube in the beauty community. So it's just a series of questions where we show our newest palette, our oldest palette, our palette with the best memories, just some fun questions related to specifically eyeshadow palettes. And again, I miss the good old classic YouTube tag videos. And you guys know eyeshadow is one of my favorite makeup products. A whole entire video dedicated to talking about my favorite eyeshadow palette. I couldn't pass up. I will leave the questions to this tag video down in the description below if you're interested in participating in this video as well, and making one for your channel. And then I also have all the palettes that I talk about linked down in the description box below as well, if they are available. Today is all about things eyeshadow, so let's go ahead and get into this all about my eyeshadow palettes tag video. I have the questions. They're not really questions. They're phrased as like show this palette, show that palette. So they're not really questions. But the first segment of this video is show your newest palette. I honestly couldn't believe that this was one of the first questions because I just got 4 new eyeshadow palettes in the mail. It was like this brand new. I was going to film this video, which they totally didn't, but it says show your newest palette, meaning one, but I received all 4 of these on the same day, so it's not one that's like newer to me than the other one, since they're all from the same collection and I received them all on the same day. These are the new palettes by Essence Cosmetics. I received their entire new collection of palettes. These palettes are based on fire, water, air, and earth. So I will go ahead and show you guys these palettes. I was recently put on Essence Cosmetics PR list, which I thought was really awesome. So this was my first shipment. They sent me these palettes. This one, as you guys can imagine, is my favorite. This is the Earth palette. You guys know these are my colors. I cannot wait to start trying these, swatching these, and just creating tons of looks with these palettes. I feel like Essence is one of those brands that is so underrated, but you guys know they're one of my favorites. You guys, I love their mascara, and there's just so many products from Essence that I love. So this is the Earth palette. They also sent me the Air palette. This one it's more of a pastel type of palette, of course. These have a lot of pinks and purples and lots of shimmers. It's a more like carefree palette to create some fun different looks. I feel like this palette will be probably the hardest palette to create an entire look with because they're all so light. There's not really any dark color. These would make great lid colors though, so we'll see what I can come up with this palette eventually. And then I also received the Fire palette. This one is very warm toned. It has a lot of vibrant reds and oranges and a few tints of yellow in here as well. You guys know I love my warm tones in the summer. I really got out of warm tones though. I need to start getting back into wearing warm tones. I would say like almost 2 years ago I used to wear them all the time, and then I like totally stopped for whatever reason, but I need to get back into them because whenever I start wearing them again, I'm like, wow, I miss this. This will be a great palette to get back into that with. And lastly, this is the Water palette. This one is just a really fun monochromatic palette with blues, and then we have like a gold color, so it'd create some gorgeous looks as well. It's super fun if you like color. You guys know I don't wear color on the average basis, but I do create looks that have some fun color in here. So again, I'm really excited to try this one out as well. And I'm really excited to try these shimmers too. I think they're going to be absolutely gorgeous. So I'll be doing videos with all 4 of these palettes eventually in some capacity, showing looks and things like that with this whole collection of their Earth, Water, Air, and Fire palettes. These are available on Essence.com EssenceCosmetics.com, Amazon, UltaBeauty.com, and CVS. I'm not sure. I believe they are in store now, but I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that they are available online for purchase now. Check your local store if they have these in stock yet, but again, I wanted to show you guys this new collection known as Face the Elements. The next one is Show Your Oldest Palette. So I first started out with like e.l.f. type palettes, but I think I got rid of a bunch of those. I don't really have a bunch of my old palettes anymore, but this is probably my oldest palette that I have. This is the Maybelline The Nudes palette. I barely touched this palette. I was so excited about it when it first came out, and I got this palette when I was like really starting to get into makeup, because I was just like, wow, a really nice palette. I was never impressed with the pigment in this palette, but it's been a while since I've tried this palette, so I need to get back into using it. But from what I remember, I wasn't super impressed. But back then, I wasn't as good with makeup as I am now, so I could definitely try to use this palette again. But this is probably one of the oldest palettes that I have. I don't even hear anybody talk about this palette anymore. Most affordable palette. So again, I do have a few of the e.l.f. palettes that I still have, like from the OG days that I never used, so I need to get back into using these. But this is probably my oldest palette. This is the e.l.f. Flawless Eyeshadow Quad in the Golden Goddess Quad. So this is probably my most affordable one. I don't even know if I don't think they make these specific ones anymore. These were only like, I think $2 and $3, maybe $4. I think like $2 to $3. This is the most affordable palette that I have. Your most expensive palettes. I have a couple palettes that I've been gifted. I actually won like an Ipsy giveaway like several years ago. As far as like most expensive palette, I wanted to pick one to feature in this video that I actually paid full price for. So that's the palette that I'm going to share with you guys. Actually, I think regardless, this is my most expensive palette, so it doesn't even matter if I won or was gifted palettes anyways, because I think regardless, this is still my most expensive palette, even out of the ones that have been sent or gifted. So this is my most expensive palette. This is the Urban Decay Heat palette. I paid a full retail value for this palette when it first launched. I paid $54, which is insane, and this is the only Urban Decay Naked palette that I've ever paid full price for. You guys know the other palettes I'll be featuring in this video, but the Urban Decay Naked palette, like the original, I purchased when it was being discontinued. Got that for like 50% off. I was all hyped up about it a couple years ago, like I said, when I was all into the warm tones in the summer, and I still am. I don't know why I got out of it, but as you can tell, I barely touched this palette. There's another question in this tag video, show the palette that's not worth the hype, and this is going to be a palette that I was going to display for that palette as well, but I didn't want to double the palettes. I wanted to feature other ones as well. If I were to pick two in that category, this one, in my opinion, would not be worth the hype. I think it just has almost like too many red tones. Like there's a ton of red tones, and then only like two really good brown tones. I don't know. Something about this, I just don't reach for it very much. I don't know why. I think I just have my everyday palettes like my Urban Decay Naked, and then I don't really branch out, but I need to work on branching out. This is the most expensive palette that I own because I paid full retail price for it. So yeah, this is the most expensive one, and it's also one that, in my opinion, is not worth the hype, but we'll get into that when that question comes along in the tag video. This is the most expensive one, which I am fully aware that is insanely expensive for eyeshadow. I hated admitting that on camera, but to be honest, like, there are other people that have like $169 eyeshadow palettes. I'm not justifying mine or theirs in any way, but just know that I think we all have our thing that we like to splurge on and that we enjoy, that are our hobbies, and for me that's makeup. The next one is your everyday palette. So you guys can guess this one. This is my Urban Decay Naked palette. I purchased this when it was being discontinued. I'm so bummed that they discontinued this. I think that's like the worst move they ever made. I am so bummed that I only purchased one of these, and I'm so bummed that I waited all these years that I've been into makeup. I'm so bummed that I waited until this palette was being discontinued to purchase it, because I truly love it. Like you guys know, I wear it in almost every single one of my videos. I love this palette. I just love it, and I've almost hit pan on a couple of these shadows. I obviously haven't hit total pan at all, but I am getting close. But palette is very well loved, and I'm just so sad that this palette is discontinued. This is my everyday palette. It doesn't say that I don't use other eyeshadow palettes, like I obviously do, but this is the one that I pretty much always use whatever stage you are in your makeup use, like beginner, intermediate, or like advanced, where you like to try colors and nudes and shimmers and mattes, like no matter what or how much you are into makeup, we all have our favorites. Like even those that like to try crazy looks and that really like colorful looks, like to use a lot of different products, we still have our favorites, and that goes for me too. Most colorful palette. I have a few colorful palettes. I have about 3, but I picked the palette that had the most shades in it to feature as my most colorful, because the way that I pictured it was most colorful, meaning like the most color. This is the Ocean Awakening palette by IBY Beauty. I was gifted this in my Ipsy Live creator bag. It was one of the palettes they included in there, and I honestly really like it. I obviously haven't touched it very much, but I know in my Moondust Galaxy makeup look I used a bunch of these turquoise and blue shades, and they are really great. I love IBY Beauty products in general. They're such high quality, and I love their eyeshadows. And this has a really great array of colorful shadows, greens, blues, purples, nice neutral colors as well, but this has the most amount of color than any of my palettes. So this is a really great palette in my opinion if you want to get into starting to use color, because it also has some more neutral colors in here as well. If you're just starting out with colors, but this is my most colorful palette that I own. You guys know I'll always be a neutral eyeshadow gal at heart, but it is fun to try out colors once in a while. The next one is smallest palette. I chose 2 palettes for this category, because I wasn't sure if they meant like smallest product, like in size, or the least amount of product, or the least amount of shadows, or just the physical size of the product. To cover my bases, I chose 2. As far as the amount of product goes, this is the smallest palette that I have. This is the e.l.f. Brightening Eye Color palette, and this is the Butternut palette. This is also one of my oldest palettes, but this is definitely the smallest in terms of size and amount of product that you get. However, as far as amount of shadows, we have this Pot Beauty Trio in the shade. This is the Bright Up Your Life eyeshadow trio in the shade Naturally Bare, and I received this in an Ipsy bag a while ago, and this is still one of my favorite trios. I still wear this palette all the time. I absolutely love it. I chose this palette to feature in this category as well because it's small and it has less shadows than this palette, like less amount of colors. So I didn't know, again, what they meant as far as smallest, meaning less product, physical size, less amount of color, less amount of shadows. I wasn't sure. This one is a trio, so it only has 3, duh. So I really do love this one as well. These are my 2 smallest palettes in my collection. The next one is your biggest palette. I don't really know why I tend to not reach for large palettes. I think it's just because it's easier to grab a smaller palette and just create a quick look and go. I think it also might be because I maybe get overwhelmed by the amount of shadows and I don't know what kind of look to create. I really don't know why I don't tend to reach for large palettes. They're difficult to store, so that's another component. There's just a lot of components that go into my decision of not reaching for large palettes. But I'm bummed because like the Jaclyn Hill palettes, I've heard the pigmentation is great, but I've never purchased those palettes and I never will because they're so big. They have so many shadows. I know I just wouldn't reach for those. I just know that. Like no matter how good the pigmentation, I always gravitate towards smaller palettes. I just do. I always have from the start. As much as I want to try those palettes, pigmentation, I just know I'll never reach for them and they'll sit in my collection. This is the largest palette that I have. This is by Morphe. This is the 25A Copper Spice palette, and I received this at the Ipsy event as well in the creator bag. This has 25 shades. I think this is the largest palette, but again, lots of neutrals, which is so me. I do use this palette sometimes, but of course it's not my most used because it is so big. But yeah, this Morphe shadows are great in general, so it is totally worth it if you're into great quality shadows and don't mind large palettes. The next one is your palette with the best memories. This one was super fun and I knew exactly what palette I was going to talk about with this category. This is the Urban Decay Original Naked Basic palette, and this is the palette with the best memories. This is old too. It's really, really old. I don't use it very much anymore, which I should. I know it's bad to have old makeup, but I do. I just still use stuff. I know it's not good. You don't need to come at me. This is the palette with the best memory. It's story time about 3-4 years ago. Oh no, it had to be longer. I would say about 5 years ago. My family and I went to Grand Rapids for spring break. We don't travel ever for spring break. That was like the first time ever that we ever went anywhere. It's like a spring break spring vacation. I don't know if I'd really call it a vacation. We went on a trip to Grand Rapids and we went to visit family and stay in a hotel and just have fun. And they have some really great shopping malls in Grand Rapids and we just had a really great time. And I did a lot of shopping. I went to a Sephora store for the first time. It was the first time I ever went inside a Sephora and actually bought something. And I remember that this palette was like all the rage. This is the one high-end palette that I ever wanted. It was my first time ever purchasing a high-end palette and I was so excited. And I just remember like going back to the hotel and opening it and being, wow, I can't believe I have this palette. It's just cool to see like how much I've grown in my makeup and just, it's cool. And so this is the palette with the best memory. It was just a really fun trip too. There's a lot of memories in that family trip and it was being my first time ever going into a Sephora and actually buying something and this being my first high-end palette and how much I wanted it. This palette holds a lot of good memories. This next category was the most difficult for me to talk about. So this one is a palette worth the hype. As you can tell from the palettes I've already shown, I use a lot of classic palettes. I don't use a lot of quote trendy palettes, I guess. So as far as hype, I guess I don't buy the newest palettes that come out right away because I do try to use, as much as I love makeup, I do collect it and stuff, like I do try to use up the makeup that I have, so I don't have the newest makeup on the shelves. I don't have the newest palette. So this was really, really hard. And as far as like hype goes, like the palettes that are like really hyped are ones that I actually don't really reach for that much, but I do like them. So I think they are worth the hype, if that makes sense. This was the most difficult one, but I'll go ahead and show you guys what palette I ended up choosing. This palette is not really hyped anymore, but when it first launched, this palette was so hyped. It was like the palette that everybody had to have. I got sucked into the hype and I asked for it for Christmas and I received it and I really love the pigmentation and I don't understand why I never used this palette. I think I've used it like twice. That's so bad and I don't know why I don't reach for it because I really do love it. Although I know that Anastasia Beverly Hills has the soft glam palette. And to be honest, I think that one suits me even more than this one, the Renaissance palette. I think that'll be the next palette that I treat myself to if it's not discontinued. As far as like palettes that have been most hyped that I own, I would say that like this is worth the hype. I personally don't reach for it a lot. Again, I don't know why. It's not that it's not a good palette. It is a really great palette and I love this palette. Don't know why I don't reach for it, but again, as far as palettes that have been the most hyped in the beauty community, I would say that this is the one that's the most worth it because it is really great and the pigmentation is really great. But I think the soft glam palette is more me, so I think that'll be the next Anastasia Beverly Hills palette that I purchase. This is the palette that's been the most hype that I own that is worth it. In my opinion, it is really great quality. The next category is a palette not worth the hype. So this one was pretty easy for me. This was another palette that I was real hyped up about. This is the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basics palette, and this was really hyped when it first came out. This is really old as well. I don't think I've ever used this palette. Like, I'm just gonna confess, I've never used it. At the time that this came out, I had all the Naked Basics palettes. I have the Naked Basics 1 and the Naked Basics 2. I love them. I also forgot to mention, they don't make the Naked Basics palette anymore, but I'll link the Naked Basics 2 palette down below. It's incredibly similar, and I do have both, and they're really great. I was like, oh, I have to complete my collection and get the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basic palette because I was obsessed with that palette, or those previous two, so I thought I had to have this one, but I just don't think it's worth the hype. I don't know why I know why I got so hyped up, but I don't think, it's obviously not hyped up anymore, but I don't have the newest palettes to show you guys. So out of the palettes that I have been the most hyped. This one is not worth it, in my opinion. I don't reach for it. I don't know why I don't. When I received it, I remember thinking that the colors look different online than they do in person, so I think maybe that's why, but for the price, especially, like, this palette is just not worth it, in my opinion. Not worth the hype. Not to say that I'll never use it, but there are definitely other palettes that I would recommend over this one, if that makes sense. The Urban Decay Naked Heat palette is also another one that's not worth the hype. And I didn't want to list the same palette for the same category, but I thought I would mention that again in this category. The next category is favorite palette from a favorite brand. This was the most difficult category in this tag video for me because here's the thing. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant. I really wanted to do this tag video, but this was honestly the one category that was like holding me back from almost not doing the entire video because here's why. I love all different makeup brands. You guys know that. I use so many different brands. It's actually pathetic. I just love trying different brands. I think different brands have different niche. Anastasia Beverly Hills, like I love their brow products. Like I love the Urban Decay Naked Original palette, but I don't love the Naked Heat palette. For example, like one of my favorite brands is Tarte, but I don't use a lot of Tarte shadows. I use a lot of Tarte face products and lip products, you know, so there's just different categories within different brands that I enjoy using the most. And some brands, for example, Benefit Cosmetics and Essence Cosmetics, like those two brands, I'll use almost all the products from that brand. Their face products, their eye products, their lip products, like I'll use anything. There's just some brands that just have more of a niche within a certain category. Again with the eyeshadow, like there's so many shadows that I love and they're all from different brands. Some palettes or some brands have better warm tone palettes. Some brands have better cool tone palettes. Some brands have better pigmentation in certain kinds of palettes. Even like for example e.l.f. like a really inexpensive brand, but even within their different palettes, some of them are more pigmented than others. And eyeshadow is just something that ranges so much. This was so impossible for me because my favorite brands as a whole actually don't have my favorite shadows. I guess that's what I'm getting. My favorite brands like Benefit, Essence, where's some other ones, like I'm drawing a blank, that I use the most, like they're not brands that I actually love. They're like Too Faced. Too Faced is one of these palettes I'm going to show up in the next category I love, but I don't use a lot of other Too Faced products, you know, so I didn't like that category in the tag, but that was just me personally with my experience with eyeshadow. For that category, this is the palette that I chose. My favorite palette from my favorite brand, this is the Tarte Lip Palette. I love Tarte as a whole. I think the quality of their products are super great. I don't touch this palette a lot, but as far as a favorite palette from a favorite brand, there wasn't another palette that I owned that was like in my top 3 list of favorite brands, if that makes sense. So that's why I chose the Tarte one. Oh, you guys can see my camera. How good is that? Tarte is one of my top favorite brands, but I don't utilize palette very much at all. That was a really hard question, but as a whole, Tarte is, again, one of my favorite brands as a whole. They have such great products. I know that was a long explanation, but I just really wanted to mention that. The last category is most used palette. This is another category that really confused me a bit because the other categories were everyday palette. I feel like your everyday palette is your most used palette. I guess I don't know why I included a separate category for that. My most used palette is definitely the Urban Decay Naked Original palette. However, I didn't want to show the same palettes for the same categories, so I also chose this one. This is the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. I love this. This is my second most used everyday palette. I don't believe they make this one either anymore, but I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. The pigmentation and the blending is impeccable, and I love the color combination. Cool tone, that's so me. It was a tie between this as my everyday palette and the Urban Decay Naked Original. I figured I would talk about this as my one of my most used palettes. Like I said, the Urban Decay Naked Original is my most used. I didn't want to feature the same palette for the same category, so this is my second most used. I feel like with a tag video, you can adapt stories or questions to fit what you use and still be able to participate, but this is a very loved palette, and I'm so bummed that they don't make this palette anymore either because I think it's definitely one of their best palettes. I really want to get the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. That's the one Too Faced palette that I have just really regretted not getting. Maybe one day I can. This is my second most used eyeshadow palette. So that is all the categories for the eyeshadow, all about my eyeshadow palette tag video. I really enjoyed this video, just casually talking about some of my favorite palettes with the best memory, and just kind of going through my collection and seeing what I use and what I don't use, kind of talking to you guys and explaining my thought process behind all of these categories and why I chose palettes for those categories that I did. As I mentioned in the beginning, I really miss like these casual, just like sit down and chat about different categories of different things. The classic tag videos that YouTube used to be more of. It was really just a nice, fun video to film. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about my eyeshadow palettes. Huge shout out to Samantha March and Allie Glines for creating this tag video. and I was really just happy to be a part of the trend. Let me know if you guys have seen this tag video going around. I know I'm late to the party. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll have everything linked down below that I can find, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys.